Willkommen and welcome back to the second course. In this course, you are going to learn more about grammar, saying sentences in different times, and of course, much more vocabulary to help you get started. Are you ready? Let's start with our first lesson. As I said, the main focus of this course is going to be about present perfect. Das Perfekt. Which means we are going to learn how to say different sentences in the past. Let's start. The first part of this lesson is going to be about verbs that don't include movement. As you can see, verbs that don't include movement physically are going to be built like that. To say this verb in the past tense, you have to add the verb haben or to have. And of course, it's going to be written as the pronoun before it. Ich habe, du hast, sie, es hat, and so on, you know? Plus the new form of the verb, the past participle. Those verbs or those forms are the ones that you have to learn by heart. Let's see an example. If you want to say, I bought, in German, you would say, ich habe gekauft. Let's go through it. To buy something isn't necessarily a verb where you move a lot, right? Therefore, you use the verb haben. And because the pronoun is I or ich, that's why you write habe. Ich habe. And gekauft comes from the verb kaufen, which means to buy. Ich habe gekauft. So as you can see, gekauft is the form that you have to learn by heart. But I can say this. Almost all those verbs start with ge. As you can see in the second sentence, I did is ich habe gemacht. Ich habe gemacht. To do something isn't necessarily something that you move in it. So you say habe. Because you say ich habe. And then you add ge, and then the form of the verb machen, which means to do. Ich habe gemacht. This is how you express a past action or event that doesn't include movement. In other words, I can tell you that almost 75% of all verbs use the verb haben. However, it's really important to know the 25% as well. Let's see a more complicated sentence, like yesterday we talked at the restaurant. Yesterday is gestern. We talked, so the pronoun is wir. And to talk, you don't actually move a lot in it, so you use haben. And in German, sometimes you have to switch between the pronoun and the verb, but this is for another lesson. So for now, you have gestern haben wir, and then you don't write the second verb, geredet, but you write first at the restaurant. So, gestern haben wir im Restaurant geredet. Aha, what does that mean? Well, in the German language, in the past perfect, the second verb, gekauft, gemacht, geredet, all those verbs are going to be at the end of the sentence. Let's see how we can use some verbs, starting with haben, which means to have. So if you want to say had, it's going to be like this. For I, you say ich habe gehabt. Ich habe gehabt. The verb to have doesn't need any movement, so it takes also the verb haben. And gehabt is the form of the verb haben. And as you can see, the verb gehabt is unchangeable, regardless of the pronoun. Only the verb haben, the first verb haben, needs to be changed. So you say, ich habe gehabt. I had. However, du hast gehabt. You had. Sie hat gehabt. He had, she had, it had. Wir haben gehabt. We had. Ihr habt gehabt. You had, in plural. And finally, sie haben gehabt. They had. Let's try with another verb, kaufen, which means to buy. Kaufen takes the verb haben. And only the verb haben is going to change. The past form of the verb kaufen stays the same. Ich habe gekauft. I bought. Du hast gekauft. You bought. Sie hat gekauft. He, she, it bought. Wir haben gekauft. We bought. Ihr habt gekauft. You bought. And sie haben gekauft. They bought. So gekauft stays the same, and you only have to change the verb haben. But, as I said, it's really important to know the forms of those verbs in the perfect by heart. Which means, if I say the verb kaufen, you should immediately be able to say, aha, gekauft is the form in the past of this verb. Again with another verb, reden. Ich habe geredet. Du hast geredet. Sie, es hat geredet. Wir haben geredet. Ihr habt geredet. And Sie haben geredet. Geredet is the new form of the verb reden, and it's the one that should be learned by heart. And it takes the verb haben, therefore you only have to change this verb, haben. And that's it. Again, with the verb machen, to do, ich habe gemacht. Du hast gemacht. Es hat gemacht. Wir haben gemacht. Ihr habt gemacht. And Sie haben gemacht. Gemacht stays the same at the end of the sentence, and haben is the one that should be changed, based on the pronoun, of course. That was only the first half of this lesson. There are another verbs that do include movement. Those are a bit different, but not very much. The only difference is that instead of haben, you use the verb sein or the verb to be. The verb to be is again the verb that should be changed based on the pronoun. And the second part, or the new form of the verb, is unchangeable. However, you add ge at the beginning. And yes, those should be also learned by heart. For example, I ran. Ran comes from the verb run, which is laufen. Laufen is a verb that you move in it. So you say sein. However, the pronoun is I, which is ich. So sein with ich should be ich bin, right? I am. Ich bin, and then the form of the verb laufen in the past is gelaufen. Gelaufen. So I ran would be ich bin gelaufen. So as you can see, this is literally the only difference. If the verb has movement in it, you use sein instead of haben. Let's try another example. Like, we drove to school. Drove, this means that the main verb is drive. And drive in German means fahren. Fahren is a verb that you move in it. So you write sein. And sein with the pronoun we or wir is wir sind. Now, you know that the second verb, which is gefahren, would come at the end of the sentence. Therefore, to school or zu Schule would be between. So the sentence is: Wir sind zur Schule gefahren. Wir sind zur Schule gefahren. Consider this as some kind of mind game. With time and with practice, such sentences are going to come out of you without thinking. Let's see how we can use this verb to run. Laufen. Starting with Ich bin gelaufen. I ran. However, du bist gelaufen. You ran. SES ist gelaufen. He, she, it ran. Wir sind gelaufen. We ran. Ihr seid gelaufen. You ran. And sie sind gelaufen. They ran. Let's try different verbs. Here, it's really important for you to recognize the new forms of the verbs that you already know in the present and try to write them so that you can practice them and learn them by heart. I went, for example, is ich bin gegangen. Ich bin, obviously, because it's a verb where you move in it. And went comes from the verb gehen, which would be gegangen in the past. Ich bin gegangen. Gegangen is the word that you should write and learn by heart. You ate. Essen. Doesn't require movement, therefore haben. Du hast gegessen. Du hast gegessen. As you can see, there isn't actually a connection between the new words. Gegessen, gegangen, gelaufen. They sound a bit similar, but it's really important to write them and learn them separately by heart. This is the only way, sadly. Let's continue with she jumped. To jump, it does sound like something that you move in it. Therefore, you say sie ist. And springen in the past would be gesprungen. Gesprungen. So the whole sentence is sie ist gesprungen. They knew. To know doesn't require movement, therefore haben. Therefore, sie haben. And wissen in the past is gewusst. Sie haben gewusst. We saw. To see something, no movement, therefore haben. Therefore, wir haben. And sehen in the past is gesehen. Wir haben gesehen. We saw. You read. To read, no movement. Ihr habt. And lesen in the past is gelesen. Ihr habt gelesen. You read. Ihr habt gelesen. And remember, this new form is not changeable. It always stays the same, regardless of the pronoun. So there is literally one form per verb. He drank. No movement. Therefore, hat. And instead of trinken, you say getrunken. Hat getrunken. If you want to say he drank water, you say hat Wasser getrunken. So Wasser comes in between, and getrunken would be at the end of the sentence. If you want to say I did sports or I exercised, ich habe Sport gemacht. Now this one is a tricky one, because if you want to say I exercised, you obviously would think that you would use the verb sein, because you actually move in this verb. However, this is one of the exceptions. There are some verbs that don't apply to this rule. And this verb is actually one of them. Because to exercise or to do sports is Sport machen. And the verb machen itself always takes haben. Therefore, even in the case of doing sports, you say ich habe Sport gemacht. Ich habe Sport gemacht. We give no movement. Wir haben gegeben. Wir haben gegeben. They cooked. No movement. Sie haben gekocht. Sie haben gekocht. The verb spielen or to play is also a verb that is always with haben. Even if you want to say something like I played football, it also with haben, even though you actually move when you do this verb. So it would be du hast gespielt. Du hast gespielt. We helped. No movement. Wir haben geholfen. Wir haben geholfen. The verb to run has actually two words in German, remember? There is laufen, which you already know, and rennen. Rennen. It also takes sein, just like laufen. So the sentence I ran could also be Ich bin gerannt. Ich bin gerannt. If you want to make such sentence negative, like you didn't say, it's quite easy. Say no movement, therefore du hast, and you simply add nicht in between. Du hast nicht gesagt. Again, the verb gesagt, or the new form, the past form, would be at the end of the sentence. Du hast nicht gesagt. Let's try to exercise. As you can see in front of you, there are 5 sentences. In each sentence, there are 2 possible answers. Try to read the sentence and choose the correct answer. I'm going to check with you in a minute. So let's see why the correct answers are actually correct. The first sentence says, Wir haben das Buch gelesen. The sentence should be, we read the book. Gelesen, there isn't actually a movement, therefore you say haben. Wir haben das Buch gelesen. Mein Vater ist im Park gelaufen. My father ran in the park. Gelaufen, to run, there is movement, therefore ist. Hast du ein T-Shirt gekauft? Did you buy a T-Shirt? Gekauft, to buy, there isn't actually much movement, therefore haben. And because this is a question, the verb hast would be at the beginning of the sentence. So you should switch between the pronoun and the first verb. Hast du ein T-Shirt gekauft? Um 7 Uhr habe ich mit Peter gespielt. At 7 o'clock I played with Peter. Gespielt, to play, there isn't a movement in this verb, therefore haben. And finally, Sie haben eine Pizza gegessen. They ate a pizza. Ate comes from the verb to eat, which is essen. Therefore, you say haben. Should we try it again? Try it one more time. Try to choose the correct answer. Seid ihr mit dem Auto gefahren? Did you drive with the car? Gefahren, to drive. Aha, this means that you actually move. Therefore, you say seid, which comes from the verb sein. Meine Mutter hat eine Suppe gekocht. My mother cooked a soup. Gekocht, to cook, comes from the verb kochen. There isn't movement or an obvious movement. Therefore you say hat. Meine Mutter hat eine Suppe gekocht. Hat den Film gesehen? Did he see the film? Gesehen comes from the verb sehen, to see. There isn't movement, therefore hat. Ist zum Kino gefahren? Did he drive to the cinema? to drive. Fahren, there is movement, therefore ist. And finally, habt ihr Brot gekauft? Did you buy bread? Gekauft, kaufen. There isn't movement, therefore habt. And because this sentence is a question, just like the two sentences before, the verb habt or ist would come first, right before the pronoun. Habt ihr, ist and so on. And that was the end of the first lesson of this course. Be ready, it's going to be fun, it's going to be excited, and you are going to learn a lot. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I will see you in the second lesson. Until then, bye bye!